Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm Edgar Wiggins, your host for this program that is dedicated to providing you with practical and useful information regarding mental health and related issues. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in this country, with a suicide occurring every 13 minutes. Suicide attempts occur every 32 seconds. Here to share with us his experience of suicide attempt and his ongoing steps toward recovery is Erik Meininger. Good morning, Erik, and welcome to Mental Health Matters.
Good morning, thank you.
Erik, can you just start out? Can we start out by talking about when you first started thinking about suicide?
I would have to say that within 6 months of my attempt is when I really started to formulate a plan, when I really came to the realization that I didn't feel like I had any other recourse. I had sort of reached the end of my rope, both physically and mentally. But the conduct of myself through my younger years leads me to believe that I may have been suicidal even as a child. Routinely put myself in very dangerous situations, a lot of self-medicating through high school with alcohol and drugs. Mm-hmm. But as far as realizing that this was going to be the way out, I would say within 6 months of my attempt is when I really started to get a solid plan together and really start to act out on what I believe was going to be the best results for me.
Can you talk about what was going on under the surface at that time? How were you feeling emotionally? Why? What was going on in terms of your sense of desperation?
I think the biggest thing was I just didn't like myself. I didn't like what I had become. I was very unhappy in any relationship I'd been in. Very unhappy with where I was within my life. I looked around and saw people that were married and had children, made the mistake of kind of comparing myself to those individuals. No children, no real career. I had a job, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't have a large number of friends. I didn't really have anything that gave me joy. I didn't have too much that made me even want to get up in the morning. I felt myself more and more just kind of going through the motions. A lot of depression, no self-esteem whatsoever. I mean, I just felt the most worthless individual. And that just started to compound itself. I mean, there were times when I would start to sort of come out of that bit of depression, but it never seemed like I came out far enough to recover from it. And when I would sink back into the depression, it would be deeper.
But in terms of depression, had you sought help for that? Had you sought therapy? Was there anybody you were talking to about it?
No, and that was by far the greatest mistake I made. I put an inordinate amount of energy into fooling people into thinking that I was doing well, to the point where I would have phone conversations and try to steer the conversations away from myself at the earliest possible moment. Return the conversation to what is going on in that individual's life. Try to put myself in a situation where I don't have to answer questions about how I feel or how I'm doing, because then I wouldn't have to hide anything.
What kept you from seeking help?
I wasn't worth it. I wasn't worth someone helping me. I was damaged goods. I felt I was way beyond repair. And quite honestly, I've never really been any good at asking for help. Getting to the point where I had to ask people for help with something that I thought I should have been able to handle myself was even worse. You know, if I couldn't snap out of it myself, what was anyone else going to do for me? But again, that was by far my greatest mistake.
So you acknowledge now that your greatest mistake was not reaching out for help, and the barriers at that time were your sense that you needed to solve your own problems.
That's correct. I didn't want to be a burden to anyone else. I didn't want to be a burden to my family. Even though individuals are trained to talk with people, I didn't want to be a burden for that person. I thought I was not salvageable, and there were other individuals that may be able to be saved. So if I was to take their place in a therapeutic setting, that individual who might be salvageable would not have that opportunity.
It's almost like your depression was so profound that, and your self-esteem was so low and so damaged that you wouldn't avail yourself of any help because you weren't worth it. You'd take somebody else's place.
That's correct.
That sort of thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, I'm following you. So let's talk about the weeks that led up to your suicide attempt.
Okay. Initially, part of the problem I had was that I was not going to work. I had recently had knee surgery, so I was spending a tremendous amount of time by myself, pretty much stuck in the house, not very mobile. As I said, I don't have, and didn't then have, a large collection of friends. So it was almost like I was retreating further inside myself. I had almost too much time on my hands to sit and think about what a horrible person I was. I had way too much time on my hands and nothing to occupy that time.
So you didn't even really have work as a distraction, because here you are, you had knee surgery, so you're not ambulatory.
That's correct.
And you're stuck in the house, so you're isolated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that gave me the opportunity to just go over every bad thing I'd ever done, to look at myself from every possible negative angle. And it just started to compound my thoughts that I am that worthless, I am that useless. I am starting to, or was starting to feel like I was becoming a burden on my family, on the few friends that I had, and even my coworkers. And that just kind of led me to believe that if I removed myself out of the situation would repair itself. If I was not there to be a burden, then these individuals would have that burden lifted from them.
So if you're gone, everybody is going to be better off.
Absolutely, myself included. I mean, my thoughts were also the pain and the anguish and the depression were so strong and so regular. And, for every time that I would climb out a little bit, I seemed to sink that much further into depression. And I would climb out a little bit, then I would sink even further down. Finally realized that, not only can this be beneficial to others, but I'll benefit from it as well, because I won't have the depression, I won't have those feelings, I won't have the conversations with myself where I constantly berate myself for decisions that were made years ago.
So you would be able to escape your pain?
Absolutely, yeah. I could escape my pain, and I could make sure that I didn't cause anyone else any discomfort or any pain.
Okay, so we're working up to when you made the decision to end your life. Say a little bit more about that.
Well, I had finally come to the point where just about every answer I had for any kind of an obstruction in my life was, well, it's okay because I'll be dead soon. Mm-hmm. I had a vehicle accident where I struck a deer, and it was going to cost several $100s to repair my vehicle. Well, if I'm not here, I don't have to repair the vehicle. That's not going to be an issue. At some point, I'm going to have to return to work, to a job that I did not enjoy, to an environment that I did not feel comfortable in. But if I were dead, I wouldn't have to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So it literally became a daily routine for me to say, XYZ problem, not an issue. I'll be dead.
You basically had found your solution.
Yeah, my solution was to completely give up. To not fight anymore. It took so much out of me to fight the depression. It took an immense emotional and physical toll on me to put up a front, to fool people, to put that much energy into making people believe that I'm okay was strenuous. And
sure.
It had just come to a head. It had come to the point where I had nothing left to give. And I didn't feel like I had anything to benefit from by living.
So how did you attempt to end your life?
I took a single action revolver and I placed it under my chin. It was a .45 caliber long Colt. It's like a cowboy gun.
Sure.
The issue I had was that this weapon is actuated by cocking the hammer before you can pull the trigger.
Right.
I had to do that 3 times. The first time I cocked the gun, I put it under my chin, I pulled the trigger, and it got snagged in my shirt.
Right.
As a result of that, I had to put the weapon down towards the ground, clear it, recock it, place it back under my chin. I pulled the trigger a second time. The same thing happened. It got stuck in my shirt. The third time, I cleared it, I put the gun up to my chin, and the next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital.
Okay. When you woke up in the hospital, what were your first thoughts?
My initial reaction and my very first thought was, I can't believe I couldn't even get this right. I mean, I was literally, for about 15 or 20 seconds, I was disappointed in the fact that the very thing I thought was going to bring salvation to myself and those around me, I couldn't even get that right. I couldn't even kill myself right, you know, and that was appalling to me. How could you not even get this right? And that lasted, like I say, 15 or 20 seconds. And that was immediately followed up by the thought that I shot myself in the head with a .45 caliber revolver, and I lived. And then I said it again, and then I said it again. And it almost became like a mantra. I shot myself in the head, and I lived. Then I got to thinking about why. Not why did I do it? I knew why I did it.
Sure.
Why did I survive? What was it about me, or what is it about me that I deserve to live through that traumatic and that physically altering of a situation?
What'd you come up with?
I'm still thinking about it. I'll be honest with you. I'm still, every day, I try to tell myself there's a reason.
Right.
You know, I did go back to college, and I'm currently attending Frostburg State, but I'm not entirely certain that's why. I've had contact with many individuals like yourself in the mental health field, but I'm not entirely sure that's why. I'm actually attempting to write a book about my situation, but I'm not even entirely sure that's why. I think what it's going to end up being, if I ever come up with a clear solution, is it's going to be a combination of all those things.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk more about this, but we need to take a short break, so we'll be right back.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
This is the moment I knew. His future had no boundaries.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
No more pencils, no more books.
No more teachers' dirty looks.
School's out for summer.
School's out forever.
School's out with fever.
School's out completely.
What this place needed was better graduation rates. So we worked with schools like Henry Ford High, and now they're up 18%. And it can happen in every place.
School's out for summer.
To help us do more good this year, go to unitedway.org, because great things happen when we live united.
They said I couldn't dream. Called me a piece of trash and swore that's all I'd ever be. Said a bottle couldn't see the ocean. give up. Go back to the dumpster. But I didn't listen. I made my way. And now, I am what I've always wanted to be.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. We're joined today by our guest, Erik Meininger, who has come to share his experience and his journey having made a suicide attempt and now being on the road to recovery. So before the break, Erik, you were sort of talking about what led up to your attempt, your initial sort of reaction when you woke up in the hospital, and then this idea that you're here for a reason, okay? So let's talk about, you wake up in the hospital, you've made a serious suicide attempt. Let's talk about some of the nuts and bolts steps of your recovery.
Okay.
What did you do about seeking help for your depression, that sort of thing?
Well, the first benefit I had from being in the hospital that wasn't physically related but mentally related is I had to spend a week in the psych ward before I was let out of the hospital.
Okay.
One of the first things that I attended when I was in the psych ward was a group meeting of other individuals that had psychological issues. And I slowly started to realize that even though I couldn't talk because my jaw was wired shut, I could hear plenty. And the things that I was hearing were the very things that I used to think myself. I heard someone almost verbatim say something to what I had thought moments before I made my attempt. And that really shocked me because I realized that I'm not alone. I thought I was the only one that felt this way. And just in this room of 10 or 12 people, there were 2 or 3 individuals in there that could have been talking about my situation even though they were explaining their own. After leaving the hospital, my family and myself put out some search and some feelers for psychological treatment. Mm-hmm. Insurance issues kind of tied me up. So in the meantime, I went to Grassroots and was able to speak to a counselor there. I think in total, we probably made 4 or 5 trips there before the insurance kicked in and I was able to go to a psychiatrist.
Okay.
I found those meetings to be incredibly helpful because I was given a situation where I didn't feel uncomfortable speaking about very personal issues. And even though I was in a situation where I was asking for help, it was thrust upon me at the same time. And that made it a lot easier because now I wasn't entirely responsible for asking for this help. It was sort of being offered to me at the same time. After that, I went and saw a psychiatrist, and she was the one that actually diagnosed me as bipolar.
Okay.
So then I was introduced to the possibility of taking medications to help center my mood or help level it out. And I want to say within a month or 2 of taking the medications, I started to realize that I did not feel like I was on an emotional roller coaster. Many times when I explain my situation to people, I tell them that I felt like I was on a separate track. And that while some individuals were making small undulations in their life trip, I was making skyrockets and deep dives, skyrockets and deep dives. That started to flatten out.
Okay.
So the psychotropic drugs were a great help, but by far the greatest thing I did was start to talk, to explain what I felt to an individual who could help me interpret what I was feeling. And that by far was the greatest benefit of my mental health treatment, is having an individual to speak with that is trained to listen and won't necessarily give you the advice, but will lead you to figure out your own advice.
Okay, so you've gone from a situation where you make a suicide attempt. One of the things that you described was feeling isolated, alone, this sense that nobody else is experiencing this. So you go into the psychiatric hospital. You can't talk because your jaw's wired shut.
That's correct.
But you can listen. And all of a sudden, it becomes clear to you that you're not the only one who feels this way.
Yes.
So you go from feeling isolated to feeling like, well, maybe I'm not so unique. Maybe there are other people that experience the same problems. So we go with that step. And then the next step you go to is seeking some counseling, finding a psychiatrist, so that the mood swings, which have been very intense and painful for you, can now be treated biologically.
That's correct.
To medicine. Okay. What's the next step?
Well, once I started to realize that I wasn't alone in my issue, as far as the feelings I had, and once I had the tools to medically assist me and to have an individual that I could speak with on a weekly basis, I started to realize that I did have some self-worth. I started to realize that maybe I should do something to try to advance myself even further than I had. I had achieved an associate's degree back in the early 1990s and thought that it wouldn't be a bad idea to go back to school. So I got together with the Veterans Administration under the Vocational Rehabilitation Act and was able to start attending Frostburg State University, where I'm attempting to get a bachelor's in earth science.
So again, you're moving forward. Talk a little bit about what your attempt meant in terms of your relationship with family and friends.
Ooh. Right off the bat, I tried to express to my family and my friends that while I understand they're grateful for me being here, at some point they're going to get mad. At some point, the shock of my survival may wear off enough that they'll start to have some feelings of contempt for me, or they may be upset with me because I didn't come to talk to them, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. And one of my concerns is that happened. I wanted that to happen. I wanted to get that off the plate. The only way I could do that, I thought, was to let everyone know that when you're ready, come and talk to me. Let's get the negative out of the way. I've also been asked in the past if I would ever make another attempt. Having seen how I affected my family and my friends and the devastation that I brought upon these people that I love, they loved me a great deal, and I wasn't comfortable with that previously. I could tell you why I loved every single person in my family. I could tell you why I loved my friends. I couldn't come up with a single reason